open up the floor for suggestions on objectives for goal 2. And we'll do the same process with our stakeholder groups, and they'll tell us long-term how they want to measure leading indicators. So any thoughts on goal 2? We have some notes here. We can't record them that fast. Please slow down with your suggestions.
Not all at once.
Not all at once here. I'll make a suggestion, throw it on the table, is to make the education and formation of top-notch innovative leaders for the K-12 system a top priority. Now, how we'll measure the outcome and all, that'll be an interesting. But I would make an objective to have outstanding leaders available to, I would probably start with the principal position, but you could say it about superintendents, you could say it about boards, you could say it about department chairs. But outstanding leadership attracts outstanding teacher talent, which just all flows, but outstanding leaders for schools.
And along that same line, the other area that I'd really like to look at is the teacher preparation track, the whole, really thinking about some strategies in that, and not just in terms of how we prepare them, but who are we recruiting into teacher education. I've been reading some of the stuff on Finland right now, and it's kind of interesting. They're only taking the top 10% of their high school graduates into teacher education pre-service programs, which is kind of interesting. I'm not suggesting a strategy today. I'm just saying I'd like for us to think about some strategies around how do we attract our best and brightest talent, including alternative routes, getting, especially when you think about STEM areas, how do we get industry people to the classroom?
So does it shake out sort of similar in the structure to the conversation we had around goal 1, that you're identifying essentially teachers, principals, superintendents, and boards as groups of people that you want to specifically improve the quality of all those people? You had mentioned the leaders, which was the boards, superintendents, and principals, and Brad brought in the teacher piece. So
I think I'd separate those two, not that they're interrelated, inextricably interrelated, but I'm open to discussion about it. I just think that position is so critical. The research now is so clear, especially on the principal's position.
Yep, leaders and teachers would be the 2 buckets I've heard so far.
You'd separate them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost suggest thinking about separating the leaders, because I would think that the strategies that you need to apply to the boards, for instance, which I agree completely that leaving out the boards is a serious oversight. But you would probably have some different strategies for each of those different levels in terms of actually operationalizing. You want to increase the quality of boards. What do you do to do that? And how do you measure the quality of boards? That's going to be a different type of measurement than you would use for superintendents, and different strategies in terms of superintendents. Probably different for principals and different for teachers. So you may well be looking at least 4 tracks there. That's my sort of immediate reaction to your suggestion, because I think you have hit the big buckets. I mean, there really aren't any, there are other buckets of, other type of staff, but those are the crucial ones. And the question is, how are we going to actually assess that we're improving the quality of those 4 constituencies? Is that,
I think
first of all, is there consensus that those are 4 important constituencies that you want to focus on?
Well, maybe first, what buckets what objectives? How many objectives are you looking at? What do we think here, the 4 of us?
Teachers, leaders, boards.
Put boards outside of.
Well, if you have 2 buckets, you have teachers and leaders, and then under leaders you have 3 subsets: principals, school boards, and what was the third?
I suppose central office folks. But
superintendent.
I don't know.
The outcome indicators, there could be some common ones too. Student achievement. could be an indicator of the quality of a principal, for example, or the school board or the teachers. And so there might be some discrete objectives, but also there may be some common ones too. I'm comfortable with those four, if that's the question.
Yeah, because you really have touched on sort of the important question, which is how do we assess quality in each one of those areas? Certainly student achievement outcomes is an ultimate measurement, but can we actually say that because a district has a higher average of student achievement than another district, ergo, the board is better, the superintendent's better, the principals are better?
Well, I'll go back to my statement before. There needs to be multiple indicators. So no, one criterion would not be the only indicator. There have to be multiple indicators. There's all kinds of leadership scales out there too that we could potentially use to determine quality of leadership within a school corporation.
And on some level, you could use the indicators that you're going to identify for goal one, disaggregated, as that
Absolutely.
larger overall piece that you've described.
The achievement gap may be an example of that. Pull that data on achievement gap and link that back to leadership within that school corporation.
Superintendent, I don't know how you feel about this, but I just have a question. It's an interesting question. If we start looking at what we want to accomplish and the role of the state agencies connected with education, is that an area where you want to develop? I mean, in one sense, some of the objectives we talked about in the last session were a lot about research, being excellent with data, articulating high impact practices, more almost like a service center to help schools actually achieve it. Is that an area where we want to develop not only leaders for it, new leaders to form and educate, but develop the leaders we have in those positions around research, understanding best practices deeply, and being like a resource center to help you achieve the objectives? Is that a separate group? It's a unique role, state agency, whether it be in the governor's office or in the State Department. It intrigues me because what we've been talking about is a great, almost mentoring, research, information, repository and development of people and studying strategies, maybe in partnership with higher ed. I don't know.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's probably a positive take on how to go about this strategy, because this is one that I think is volatile to our teaching staff right now. They don't necessarily feel the love, and so making sure that we're putting in a support system for quality leaders and teacher effectiveness, I think is the most important thing that we can do. In fact, I'd really like to see probably all of our objectives within this aligned around that kind of system to be able to make that happen. This is a touchy area. This is not going to be welcomed unless it's phrased well, to really be proactive. Right now, as some of these things are just stated in here, I know these are just notes, but first of all, there's an assumption that we don't have quality teachers. I mean, that's an embedded assumption right off the start, and they'll take it that way.
Is that language, or just that could be inferred, or is it explicit?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Well, I just think that a lot of these things on here are, we haven't really gotten an objective written yet.
Yeah, I just want to be careful because my interest has always been like we've got the 3 bullet points there. It's about recruiting the very best, developing the very best, and then hanging on to the very best. So if we got language that says.
And if we use those 3 buckets and we talk about the services provided and
Right.
making sure services are in place for that, you know, then we may be on the right track.
It seems to me, once we go to that next level down, as we go from the broadest to more specific, then we'll start to address those particular issues. The other point I want to make is we've just sort of discussed separating leadership from teachers. And there's a number of teacher leaders
Sure.
within school corporations. So I'm going back to that initial discussion in rethinking, maybe leadership does cover teachers. And that notion that we have that bucket separate from leadership really concerns me. And I think there's a number of opportunities for teachers to become leaders within their building or school corporation, that if we separate that from leadership, we may be sending the wrong message. So I would urge us to sort of rethink that and include teachers in that leadership bucket.
So we would have an objective to have outstanding leadership for schools. Teacher leadership is essential. Principals and, school building leadership outside of the classroom.
Right.
And district and then board level, because as you peel apart that research, really great school leaders have a team of teacher leaders who feel like they own the place and are committed to making it go, and it happens every day in Indiana.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we get down to more detail, then the detail would be different on what we expect from teacher leadership and how we support them and how we celebrate their good work from a principal or a superintendent or a school board.
Yeah, but then you could go to another objective about innovative teaching strategies, instructional. So you have a whole nother level of training for people who are actually everyday teaching students. They have different needs. How to use technology? Where's neuroscience taking us? Where's best practice in literacy? Where's so you would, I mean, the art and science of teaching is almost unto itself needs an awful lot of investment. Especially when you look at the diversity of our students and we want to take everybody to a higher level, it would be hard to think of that profession, say what I learned 10 years ago will be good enough to get me where I need to be today or the next 10 years. That will be an ongoing investment issue.
Well, I like how we worded it here. Recruiting talent, developing talent, and retaining talent. Instead of putting the buckets with the categories of people, you know, just recruiting, developing, and retaining, and putting objectives down there that we think are most important to what we need to address. I'd also like to put national board certification somewhere on there, and maybe that's comes into retaining and developing.
Strategy.
But it's another strategy, and I don't think professional development is. It's in there generally, but I mean, Dan's correct that it's about the ongoing process of being a teacher, being up to date on research, being up to date on practices.
I'd like something we didn't put in there under developing talent, and this starts pointing us to maybe getting at strategies, but maybe it is an objective. Is this whole issue of dispositions, the values, the attitudes, and beliefs that leaders and teachers bring to the table? I've been concerned, just observationally. Our professional development is focused on craft, which is important. They can pedagogically teach well. I'm worried about the professionalism at times. I'm not trying to stereotype everybody, but I'm just saying I'm concerned about that, because I do agree. It bothers me to say that I agree with the statement that was made about this is a sensitive area for teachers, because they feel like when we start talking about improving quality, somehow we're picking on them. Well, I think I'm a pretty good dean, but I've got an improvement plan for myself. I always have an improvement plan. That's what excellence requires.
That's what professionals do. Because the art is changing.
Don't misunderstand me.
Right, no,
I'm
I'm
all
not.
about that, actually.
But I do. When I see some of the things I see written, and I see some of the things, the way people express themselves, I worry, because it signals, if you're that way outside of the classroom, what are you inside the classroom? And I know people can say, well, they're not like that, but I think it's something that you have to be intentional about. And I don't think you can just say, well, we're just going to develop the pedagogical pieces of the teacher. What are the professional dispositions that build the relationships? Because when I visit schools, the thing that strikes me is not that we're suffering from a lack in the area of pedagogy. We're suffering from relational issues of teachers being on the same page with their students, with the same page with their parents, with their administrators, with each other. And they're highly relational issues, and it gets back to the dispositions that they carry. And so I don't know, just something I'd like to see us as we think about as moving to strategies is that it's not just all, you know, can you teach reading better? But how do you carry yourself? How do you view yourself? How do you see yourself as a teacher leader, to use that term, which is I want to have influence. What are the dispositions I have to be able to exhibit those influence? Because if you can't build a relationship, you're not going to exhibit influence.
Brad, would you include that for principals, superintendents, and school board
Absolutely.
members too?
Everybody.
So I hate to
Everybody.
single out teachers. I think
No, yeah, I
every
agree.
leader could use that kind of
Absolutely.
disposition. I don't see it as a negative.
No.
I see it as an opportunity to stick it on a dashboard and to see how we're doing. We may be
It's
surprised
inequality.
that we're doing really well in that area. And it's an opportunity to provide professional development, additional resources, and to celebrate those who are doing a good job as exemplars.
Yeah.
In some ways, you're extending the character and citizenship goal.
Correct.
Objective from
Yeah.
goal
Correct.
1 into goal 2 as well, that, you know, that's an important piece of, so ultimately, we need to think about how to measure, you know, expanding that metrics piece.
Absolutely.
So would it capture the thinking so far that an objective would say recruit, develop, and retain high-quality educational leaders, and then break those down into the 4 categories and think about metrics of how we're going to measure high quality in those 4 categories, because they might be slightly different. Does that capture what
Mhm.
you folks are saying?
Yes.
That's an interesting, I'm not sure how to organize it.
I think it's like looking through each of those recruitment, developing, and retainment through the lenses of character, scholarship, and leadership. Do they have the character to be a teacher? Do they have the scholarship, the knowledge base? And do they exhibit the influence, the leadership influence, to effectively carry that out? Maybe to some extent there might be a way to organize it around some constructs within each of those buckets, so that when you're recruiting, you're always thinking about those 3 things. When you're developing, you're thinking about those 3 things.
Yeah, and I think that
Say how you do it. I want to stick with Brad. How would you say that again?
I was just saying,
So what's
analyze.
the objective?
The objective to me would be recruitment, development, and retainment. There's 3 objectives, but I would look at each objective through the lenses of how do we do that through the lenses of their character, their scholarship, and their leadership. Those seem to be the 3 things that keep coming, that these distill into, which is what kind of dispositions do they have, what kind of scholarship, what kind of knowledge and experience are they growing to do the art and the craft of teaching well. And then the leadership is to what extent do they have influence, not just within the classroom, but outside the walls of the classroom. How do they have influence over their peers? How do the leaders, how do the principals exhibit influence with parents, with community? There's 3 lenses: character, scholarship, leadership, and how looking at those 3 buckets that way.
I'm a little worried that the objective's so broad, it's gonna be hard to manage. We're throwing all the various types of position in one bucket and all the attributes. So,
If the objective was just retainment, could we say that we'd like a strategy around each of those 3 things? So what would be a strategy to retain, or, you know, if the strategy is recruitment, or excuse me, if the objective is recruitment, what's the strategy for finding good character and prospective
or
teachers? Or
what if we broke it up? Teacher, building leader, I'm just
Mhm.
thinking out loud with you a minute. Central office executive type positions and boards, because for instance, the disposition and skills to be an excellent executive might be different, they are different, than being an excellent instructional leader. To know that art and science of teaching and deliver it well might not be a skill set of a board member, but that's okay, and vice versa. It might not be being an instructional leader in a building is much more important than possibly the central office leader or obviously a board member. So I'm trying to think of the categories of people and their character and their natural talent and inclination attributes that you would recruit, develop, and prepare for their job might be different as night and day, and each are uniquely necessary But I want to break it up a little bit so we can manage it and measure it.
Well, the recruit, develop and retain pieces, in my mind, were sort of ways of organizing strategies. It seems to me that in
Yeah.
each one of these cases, to pick up on what Dan says, that if we take a principal, for example, for principals, all these groups, we need to recruit the best principals, we need to develop those principals while they're in place, and we need to retain them. So there will be strategies that have to speak to each one of those, because if we simply say recruit the best, we don't develop them, we don't retain them, obviously then we're never going to achieve the objectives we have. So I had seen the recruit, develop, retain piece as a way of organizing strategies, and I think that you've suggested a good way of organizing the overall objective, which is that you want to have the highest quality teachers, the highest quality principals, the highest quality superintendents, and the highest quality boards possible. And the way you're going to do that is by at each one of those levels recruit, developing, and retaining those people. But there's going to be different strategies and different, obviously with boards you have different possibilities in what you can do in terms of recruiting and retaining and developing. So you may want to concentrate on development in a group where you don't have any control over recruitment or retention, but you do have some, and there's been some good suggestions, I think, in the last session about, training for boards, basic training for boards. Georgia, for instance, is quite active in that. Their state board association is quite proactive in terms of working with the elected boards that are running the different LEAs. So
Yeah.
So the strategies would be discrete based on the group. However, when you get to character, I would argue there's going to be some similarity among those
Sure.
four groups.
sure.
But I really like that concept. It really lays out for me a structure in which we can hang some strategies.
Yeah, and in each one of these cases, what I think Brad is suggesting is that you need to be able to measure character, scholarship, and leadership in some way.
Right.
Or get some indication of, those are the qualities that you believe relate to high quality, essentially. Those are the characteristics, I've used a better
Yep.
word, that you say define high quality. If we have good character, good scholarship, and good leadership in any of those areas, ergo we'll have a high quality leader. So the challenge then for this objective in a lot of ways, similar, more so than number one, but in a similar way, is to figure out what you're going to create in terms of measurements, and that'll come from your strategies in a way, in that conversation around those strategies. So, and this I think broadens the conversation in a lot of ways to include much more than it was in goal one. I think goal one is in some ways centered around a lot about the instructional organization, but also some input from higher ed and from the business community. This one really is getting quite broad at this point, so it's a broad overarching objective. So in a way, I mean, it's a semantic issue entirely whether that's 4 objectives or 1 objective.
It's very
And I think
interesting.
That's why when I use the word primary, that's kind of what was in my mind, is that there's an overarching concept in one that students need to do better in. The question is, what are the areas that they need to do better in? There's an overarching thought in goal 2 that we want to recruit, develop, and retain high-quality educational leaders. The question then becomes, okay, how do we define leaders in such a way that teachers aren't left out, and how do we measure each one of these pieces? And then ultimately, what do we do to make that happen?
Well, it's just one or two in the process. Again, if we have to whittle this down, I'm just thinking. I know we talked about school boards, but the board itself really sets guidelines on leaders and teachers. We don't really set it on school boards. There is a school board association, and we talked about a convergence of plans. Maybe we could say, hey, this is what we're doing for leaders, this kind of approach in it. But we're going to take the school board piece out because we really can't. State board doesn't have any authority per se over a local board, but we could say to the State School Boards Association, we would love you to consider this because this is how we're framing. I don't know. I don't know if that's a way to get us down
Brad,
from.
I'm fine. We talked about it. That'd be a good, when we could get some touch points.
Yeah.
Where we juxtapose the two, say, let's link up.
Yeah.
For instance, and I suspect this is a strategy. I could look at it 2 ways. But you take the whole area of technology. It's going to be part of our solution. working with parents, working with students from very diverse backgrounds, flipping classrooms, letting really, really talented people advance further, picking up, leveling, testing to go to a level right away, and know what level I should be teaching at. We would have to make a serious, consistent, joint effort investment in some of this. This isn't to say our people who are working in the field aren't doing very well. But the technological advancements in instruction are moving just very, very rapidly. And what boards need to know about technology, central offices, principals, the state, and how we're collaborating with universities and some of the capacities we have. And not everybody can hire $100,000 a year chief information officer. And that talent, how do you type in collectively? So I don't know where the strategy, just around the technology issue, would be an incredible thought process for us to, so even within these buckets of roles, I would think we'd want to get focused on some areas that we would say have high leverage payback.
Right.
Because there's this much stuff out there to develop your people on, and then we have to figure out what areas would get us a greatest return on investment. So I would even want to unpack, and with our partners, conversation and our colleagues in the field, where can we make, if we're going to raise STEM, what do they need to know? If we're going to raise literacy, what do we need to work on there in terms of what's the art and science of teaching, reading now, and writing? Tell us.
And part of me reacts that it sounds like a strategy possibly under goal one, if you had to poke at some place the idea of working on the technology. But it could also become, at the level of a core value the same way, right? It could join those ideas of accessibility, accountability, and achievement as an overlying piece that focuses through all of these, because clearly it does inform goal one. It also has some impact because we're talking about it under goal two, and I would argue that technology is also a way that you could increase the participation of stakeholders as well. So it could be an underlying, I'm just throwing these out as suggestions. It sounds to me like it could be a big strategy under goal number one. Clearly, we're suggesting that the idea of data and the use of technology in that aspect is going to be foundational to goal number one, but also the use of, if you expand that from data to learning management, curriculum assessment, all those pieces, becomes a very important central strategy, and also one that needs to be pursued at the top level, because you can't have that being pursued in different ways in different districts and expect the districts to perform in the same way if they're using different technologies, have different access to technology. So I think it's a policy decision that the committee needs to make where it fits in the strategic plan, but it clearly could be either a very important strategy under one goal or something that informs all goals, and so you would set the expectation that every goal looks at how technology can be used to support this as a strategy.
So what objectives do we have around this now, if you were going to summarize it? This is exciting conversation.
I guess I would summarize it as I did before, that the objective would be something around recruiting, developing, and retaining the highest quality, however you want to do it with the language, educational leaders, and then specify that from your standpoint, educational leaders include teachers, principals, superintendents, and boards, and then start to struggle with the question of how are we going to define outcomes for these different groups, which has to do with interplay, as Brad keeps pointing out, between strategies, and ultimately develop the lagging indicators from that respect, and start to use your goal team number two to help flesh that out and inform you on what's going on. That would be my reaction, and I'm hesitant to put words in everybody's mouth. part of
I'm
your-
very comfortable with that.
Yeah.
This one could be perceived as a negative, that there's something wrong, as the state
Yeah,
superintendent
I
was
think
alluding to.
superintendent was right, we gotta
Here's-
watch our words there.
Here's a suggestion for you, and I'll call it a preamble,
Mhm.
or it could be part of what we're listing there, but something to do with continuous improvement. We embrace continuous improvement, and it's also a core value. And so if we're creating a core value segment of the plan, it would go there also. But I would hope that we'd have some language in there that would talk about the importance of continuous improvement. And because organizations and individuals within an organization need continuous improvement on a personal level, therefore we put forth these strategies, if that's the level we're getting at. But something like that to shape it in a more positive kind of way. What's your reaction to that?
How about a phrase of an objective of continuously improving the quality of educational leaders? Can we put it in the objective? Because, I mean, I
Right, we
think-
can put it in the agenda. I guess organizational improvement is hinged on the continuous improvement of leaders.
Maybe you hit it with the preamble idea in the sense that what needs to be done is a one-page preamble
Around talent, you
Around
could do it
the
around
entire
each of them,
strategic
yeah.
plan, you know,
right.
to
Right,
say
and then
that-
we could list all the core values that we think are important, that
in that
permeate
preamble, yeah, and make
the
point.
plan, and it also provides a foundation for what's coming forward.
I don't think people will remember the preamble, though. They're gonna read the,
Fine print.
they're gonna read the specific goals, and that's what they're gonna go by. I'd like to see them more embedded, even if we said it here, we can say it here too,
Sure.
so that it's just there all the time.
So
Can we come out and maybe saying it different? Yeah, I think I'm tracking with you, and it's in the language of the actual provide the highest quality human resources possible. And I know this is backing up a little bit, but if that language is what they're going to see and they're going to react to that, then nothing we're saying here is other than to say we want to maximize their potential. So rather than saying provide the highest quality human resources, can we say, how do we maximize the talent of human resources, or talent and capacity of our human resources, and put it in a positive, and still come at it from retainment, development, and recruitment, because that's what we really want to do. It's not saying that we think you're here and we need to bring you here. It's saying we want to make sure we're always maximizing out what you're fully capable of, because that benefits kids. And we're spending 80% of our budgets right now on personnel, so why wouldn't we invest in
Yeah,
people?
I like that idea, and this is just something to think about. You sometimes around each goal area will put a statement of connection to mission and vision and what we know, what we believe. Standards are important, measurements important, all that helps, but the research, everybody's experience in this room knows, you get down to it, you put a high-quality teacher in a classroom with excellent leadership who creates a great culture and provides instructional leadership, with a board with the right vision and compelling mission, and the thing hums. So each goal, you could say goal human, you could put the topic, human capital, and then you could put core beliefs about human capital and education. And you could write quasi-dramatic and then take Brad's thing and do our best to
Yeah.
put every one of them in a positive, then you might have a superintendent, I think your point or
Mhm.
admonishment maybe. We've got to write this in a way that makes partners and a journey of excellence, as opposed to an accusation that if you were doing a better job, this wouldn't be all screwed up. That isn't the point.
Would there
So-
be, I'm sorry.
So for each of these goals, then embedded within the goal would be a set of core values.
That's kind of what I'm.
Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm actually going to go one further. I'm asking if there'd be opposition to changing from saying provide the highest quality human resources possible to just saying maximize human resource potential, that that's the goal. just change the goal to say maximize human resource potential. So the first one would be ensure all students can
I
learn.
like
Second one
that.
is maximize human resource potential. You don't have to change any of the buckets. The buckets still, I think, all fit under maximizing human resource potential. But if I'm a teacher and I realize the goal of the state board is to maximize my potential, that seems positive to me.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
could do the
the
same
one-
thing on 3, maximize the involvement and support of all
You
Indiana
could,
students.
we
Yeah,
could, we
yeah,
could,
that's
we
true.
could, we could.
Doesn't work for number 1, unfortunately.
I can maximize achievement, but.
You could maximize student learning. That shouldn't be bad.
I just wondered if that would help with the concern about how that's gonna hit the average educator sitting out there that may not understand the background of the conversation that led to that statement.
Yeah.
By the way,
The
there's
one-
a large human resource organization that does executive talent evaluation.
Right.
And one of their big bugs is maximizers. Maximizers tend to be good leaders, so see, it just comes.
The
flows
other
right up on
piece
you.
that I did not remember to point out, there was some reaction in the stakeholder groups to human resources. Now, you're using human
They
capital.
they
That
didn't
was,
like
people
either
were
one of
much
them.
happier with the idea of human capital. They felt that human resources was kind of tarred with problematic connotations, and that,
So they
that
say,
would be-
say maximize the potential of human capital,
yeah.
That's fine.
Why don't you just say human talent?
There you go.
maximize, yeah,
I
maximize
like
potential.
talent. No, it
Do-
is. Yeah,
is-
no, talent's a
Do we
better
want to
word.
put continuous improvement?
Because
in
the
there?
capital will bug some people
Okay,
too.
so
Bogs it
maximize,
down, keep it simple,
That's something almost
Maximize
spell
the
it.
potential
of human talent.
of human talent. I like that.
And then our buckets still fit in there, but I think
Right.
it does address that concern, because I think it is a good point.
all right, good. So we've got
I like
a
that.
proposal to change 2 to maximize the potential of human talent. Is
Yep.
that-
Yeah, maximize the potential human talent available for our students. I don't, if you want to keep going back to that. Can create, maximize the involvement, supporting for the sake of our students, for the good of our students. You could keep tying them back to students too, if you wanted to.
What do we think? Keep it simple?
Frida's and I are
Simple
saying,
Dan.
keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
To get a couple professors to do that is a big accomplishment.
All right.
Yeah, we get paid by the word, right?
They usually want to put a dissertation in front of.
Just for the
every-
record, we seldom disagree with our university presidents, but since you're not our university president.
You say whatever you want. I say whatever they want to say, I guarantee you.
But Dan has a phone and a pen.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
Well, all right, so it sounds
Mixed
like we've
metaphor.
got
We're more collaborative. We're more collaborative.
some good ideas on goal 2 to adjust the goal itself and objective around recruiting, developing, retaining high-quality leaders and specifying who those leaders are, and that seems to be a pretty good space there. It's essentially 2 minutes to lunchtime, and so I'll ask people how they want to proceed. Would you like to? We do have some guests arriving, I believe, at 12:30. So and
May
they
I suggest we recess for lunch? This would be the care and feeding of our committee. We're down to 4 dedicated members. I think we deserve to be.
we can't lose any more.
Gotta keep the rest of your attrition.
Yeah, if we have an attrition,
You
just
split up BJ's.
if 2 or 3 of us fall, it's gonna be, pretty tough going here, so.
Since you were upset by the last image, I've got another one for you for lunchtime. 'Cause I thought
It's very springtime.
got a little bit of the vertigo that resulted from the last one. So how's that?
It's all males, though. You need to have a
Oh.
few females.
I apologize.
I don't take any offense.
Okay.
I could say you guys are always out to lunch.
Touche.
Well, on that, we better recess. We're getting off there. Thanks, everybody. We'll bite to you.